All right, guys, I believe we're live now. So thanks for joining. If you're tapping in here to our webinar on three cybersecurity best practices, my name is Derek Roush with VocalPoint Consulting. And I've got with me today, if anybody was expecting Jason Kaufman and you see Trevor Burnside on the screen, that's because Jason actually, unfortunately, had a death in the family. So had to drop out of this one. But the good thing is that our community is so vast and so wide that we have access to numerous subject matter experts, including guys like Trevor. So, Trevor, I'm going to give you a second to introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are, and then we'll jump into the three cybersecurity best practices today.
Yeah, sounds good. Appreciate it. I've kind of been in technology consulting for a little bit over 11 years now, so over a decade. Kind of my background is actually, I actually got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I thought I was going to have a career in, the criminal justice side. Ended up going into the military, did threat intelligence and stuff like that in the military. Got into technology, and then, cybersecurity ended up being a really good nexus of, criminal justice, threat intelligence, then my technology professional career there. So it ends up being, it's really a passion for me and something I love talking about.
Well, cool. Well, we're happy to have you today, Trevor. And I know your experience is going to go a long way with this discussion. So just for anybody that doesn't know who we are at VocalPoint Consulting, we're technology advisors at our heart. We just basically help clients, figure out what the best path is going forward. Instead of selling particular widgets, we just say, what problem are you trying to solve? And then we'll help you find that right technology to solve it. So we tap in a lot of times to our subject matter experts, which we, like I said, have a slew of them on our bench, Trevor being one of them. So today we're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity, hot topic of the day. If it's not AI, it's cybersecurity, I would say, Trevor.
Yeah.
So the first topic that we really wanted to jump into was around employee awareness training. Now, I've seen a stat recently that said something to the effect of, I believe 80% of all hacks today are still human error. So tell me if you can kind of sum up, number one, how do we tackle that from a training perspective? What kind of companies are out there that can help in this area? And, let's talk a little bit about, the overall landscape when it comes to employee training and why there's still just this large percentage of companies that are not training their employees well enough.
Yeah, it's a good topic to start with. I think, historically in cybersecurity, we've said, hey, train your employees not to click on the links, right? Tell people to stop clicking on the links.
Yep.
I had a CISO kind of recently tell me, like, that's kind of outdated. If you click on a link and you don't have some type of blocking or tackling within your environment, then you just have poor security posture. My response to that was security awareness training isn't just about clicking on the links, right? It's much more than that. It's about understanding the risk involved with doing business on the internet, really in general. Certainly phishing is a major risk or a major attack vector that, a lot of breaches are occurring because of phishing attempts and people clicking on links, but it's not single siloed to that, right? We got to think about domain impersonation. We got to think about, hey, maybe third-party vendors that are compromised that are email me from verified or legitimate domains, but they're compromised emails. So there's multiple things that end user or just normal employees doing day-to-day things they got to be thinking about. Certainly don't click on the links, but there's more things to it on the security awareness training.
So tell me about like some of the, hot vendors that are out there that can actually help in this area, because I think probably the 900-pound gorilla in this part of the industry is probably KnowBe4. A lot of people know the name, but are there any others out there that are doing a really good job in this space?
Yeah, Know Before is obviously, very familiar, or what most people are used to, or you hear cybersecurity, end user training, they default that way. There's different flavors though, as far as that goes, when it comes to what training who you want to gear it towards, uh, specifically on verticals, financial, healthcare, they see different things, different type of risk. One that I'm very familiar with is a company called Stickly on Security, which they do videos, they do the phishing, just like Know Before. That's kind of table stakes of you get the videos to educate, they get sent out. It includes a component of phishing tests. So you're sending, false emails to your employees, seeing who's clicking on those. And if they do, right, they have to do that remediation. Stickly on Security is a little bit more, I think, pointed towards, hey, it doesn't have to be scare tactics to teach people. And a lot of times I think the security awareness training ends up being scare tactics, making people really, paranoid about any email. And to some degree that's effective, but for maybe some clients or some cultures in business, that's not the way they want to consume that information. So there's options out there, Stickly being one of them.
Okay. And I can tell you from experience, just as a consultant, of course, you've seen this too, but I mean, we've had, I think over our years, we've been in business 15 years now. I can remember three different clients that we had that got hit with ransomware. One was, gosh, probably 12 years ago, and they had no backup. And believe it or not, they paid the ransom, and were lucky enough that they actually got their data back. So they were real lucky. We had a law firm that got hit as well, and when they got hit, gosh, they had the backups, so they were able to just say, "Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much," and we're able to just remediate, shut it down, rebuild, and go from there. But a lot of companies aren't that lucky.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, from a ransomware perspective, it's not just having immutable backups anymore as well. There's other components to it of from being hit by ransomware. Now those guys are saying, okay, you've got immutable backups, cool. Now I can use your data as extortion of, hey, if you guys still pay me, otherwise I'm going to release this information I already have now. I've already exfiltrated it from your network. I can now post this and on the dark web unless you give me $1 million. So there, it's two-factor, right? Of they're getting smarter, as security posture is improving. Bad guys are still finding a way to extort and take advantage of people's data. So back to that security awareness training. If you can stop and prevent before you have to remediate, that's obviously always preference.
Yeah, I think I saw a statistic recently that said something to the effect that I guess it was about 5 years ago. The old stat was that the average dwell time was somewhere in the average of 90 days, before any kind of breach was even noticed. And what I found interesting is today it's still about 90 days. So
Yeah.
it's like we haven't gotten any better. And I'm not sure, maybe you could speak to that. I'm not sure quite why.
So the trend's been changing a little bit in the sense of, dwell time was going up like crazy of like, hey, I can stay in this network for a long time. Why would I not? That's still the case. Oftentimes what we're seeing now that dwelling times are starting to decrease where, hey, bad guys are getting access to the critical data faster. If you get access to the critical data, just lock it up and, be on your way. It really depends on how strategic they are and what the actor you're working with. If it's just if you're targeted, right, and depending on the type of company you are, the vertical you work in, you're going to have access to other critical systems or other, you want to affect other customers or other third-party vendors. If they can get a hold of that, they certainly will. If it's more of a not necessarily targeting, then we see that dwell time going pretty quick of, hey, I got access to critical data, ransomware really fast.
So if a client does get hacked with ransomware, somebody clicked on the wrong PDF, opened up the wrong email, what would you say is that, first thing that they should be doing? Is it shutting down? Is it calling an insurance company? Is it, ABC? There's a litany of things that could be done. What would you think that should be that first thing that they should be doing?
Well, the first thing that should be done is there should be an incident response plan in place. And if there's not, that's a red flag that you should be considering. Hey, we got to have some type of policy written down that says, if and when this happens, this is what we do. This is our step-by-step plan. We call our cybersecurity insurance vendor. They may have somebody on retainer that can come in and do either response or forensics or otherwise. Yep. There should be a plan in place. And if there's not, that's where you got to start. And to really determine, hey, based on our vertical, based on the clientele we have, it can be different, for healthcare getting breached as it's going to be for finance. There should be different steps taken, different considerations, but there should be a plan in place. And so that should be where you start at. And then bringing in an expert, whether that's from your cybersecurity insurance vendor, bringing in an expert, or going to a third party, or having an incident response retainer with an MSSP. That can parachute in and start working immediately. That's going to be critical.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I see so many clients that don't have that plan in place today. And it just becomes a wing it, when it does happen.
Yeah. You don't want to figure out what your process is and during the real thing, right? You want it to have a run book or a playbook that you can go by. So when things start going, and you can start, exactly which systems to start shutting down and how to block and tackle before it gets really bad. You don't want to make those decisions in the moment.
Yep. Good advice. Yeah. So the second topic I wanted to cover was around compliance. Some people look at compliance and they just glaze over, right? I mean, you look at the new CMMC compliance, just the litany of things that you have to go through and the hoops that you have to jump through to get that compliance in place. I'm seeing now companies that are popping up that are literally doing like compliance as a service. Mm-hmm. So speak to, number one, the importance of compliance, the complexity of that compliance, and the current landscape, and then what clients can do to ensure compliance in whatever area, whether it's HIPAA, SOC, or high trust or whatever.
Yeah, well, and compliance is one of the areas of specialty for me. And as anyone who's involved in compliance knows, it's a journey. It's never ending, right? It's like a treadmill that just doesn't stop. You got to jump on and just run with it. But it's going to be different, really, depending on the frameworks you have to adhere to. With HIPAA in healthcare, PCI with credit cards and finance, right? There's a lot of different things to take in consideration. There are different security requirements for each framework. Specifically around CMMC, like you mentioned, that's one of the more ones that are newer, imposed really by the federal government, saying if you're going to do business with the federal government, the DoD, you have to adhere to a certain level of security compliance as a third-party vendor risk management of the government, right? We only want to do business with people that are also secure in their environments. What that does, though, is it imposes a lot of security controls that if you're going to, like a DoD contractor or otherwise, they have to now add these controls and then prove that they're doing them to get government contracts to do business with the federal government. And it's a lot of controls. It's based on NIST 800-1701, which is a framework that's got 110 security controls. It's a lot you got to do, right? That's the things you might be thinking of: MFA, multi-factor authentication, right? Email security, endpoint detection and response, all those things, all the way up to, hey, government cloud. If you're capturing controlled information from the government, that has to be secure in the cloud, in a gov cloud environment. And for a lot of customers, that's just, they can't do that on their own, or taking that DIY approach is just going to take too long. So back to your question, who do we have? We work with one CMMC consulting firm called Ariento, that you can consider them as hey, we'll do everything from A to Z when it comes to CMMC compliance. The customer can actually rely on them to set up that security posture from zero, from nothing, actually create an enclave within GCC or a GovCloud in a high environment that's going to be compliant with what they need. and really get them on that roadmap closer to 4 to 6 months rather than, date to be determined if you did it DIY, a year at least. So a
Okay.
speed to market's critical.
So you're mentioning like AWS Gov Cloud. Azure has their own as well, right? But when is it best, or when would you advise, instead of doing public cloud, to go private cloud, and uh, get somebody to fully manage it for you in a private cloud?
Yeah, some of it's going to be determined on that compliance, what's allowed in that compliance, right? From CMMC, you do have to have a component of, from a Microsoft perspective, if you're going to be sending information over Office 365, that's got to be within a secure Microsoft environment. So oftentimes it's going to be a hybrid approach. Hey, we've got some of our workloads are going to be on-prem or on a private co-location or something like that. There's going to be that component of Microsoft, likely from a collaboration, that's got to be controlled as well. But really, it's going to be determined on that compliance, is what's with my left and right limits within my compliance. And then based on that, what's my risk tolerance for public cloud or private cloud? And then what are my internal capabilities? Do I have an AWS solution architect or an Azure solution architect that can do what I need? If not, maybe it makes sense to outsource or look at a party that I can rely on that can do that and get that speed to market, like I was saying, get me to where I want to go faster, provide the business outcome I'm looking for faster, and then I can make that ROI analysis. If you're going after other clients or things like that are really going to produce the revenue.
Yeah. So you mentioned, basically risk tolerance. So your risk tolerance is going to really determine how fast you can rebuild, how quickly you can get back to doing business, right? So when we're looking at that RPO and RTO, what would you say to a client to say, here's the best way to figure out what that risk tolerance looks like?
Yeah, by the book, we'd call it a business impact analysis, or a BIA, right? Or you take a look at all your systems, see which ones are the most critical, what's your cost of downtime for those systems individually, and then that gives you an idea of, okay, based on this database or this system, if it's down for this long, this is how much it's going to cost the business. And that gives you that idea of, okay, I need to, this is what my RTO or my RPO is, my time for uptime to get back up to date or back online. My tolerance is this much time. And if that's the case, then you can work on that and you can look at the technology that's going to get you that RTO or that RPO that you've got to have. If there's other systems that don't necessarily need to come back as quickly because they cost less on their downtime, you can then create a plan of which systems need to come up online first and which ones you can put farther back, or even how you want to do a backup. Maybe it's not maybe you can wait on those or have a different technology even that costs less and really address the risk that way.
Okay. So one of the things I was thinking about, because you had talked about a little bit about CMMC requirements. At what point does CMMC stop and kind of FedRAMP take over, or do they have to go hand in hand? So if anybody on this call today is, doing business with the DoD today, do they have to be FedRAMP compliant, or is CMMC going to be enough? How do they determine those requirements?
They're different in the sense that they cover different aspects of doing business with the federal government. If I, as a vendor, want to do business with the DoD specifically and need a, they've got a certain impact level, CMMC is going to cover me as an organization. You think of like SOC 2 Type 2, like it's certifying me as an organization that I've got the security posture in place. FedRAMP is somewhat the same, but more it's an offering in the sense that our offering is compliant to these certain adherences, right? So I was on a team that submitted what's called a FedRAMP CSP to be a cloud solution provider. So, if I've got this idea, it's going to be a great new drone for the government. I'd have to submit a FedRAMP CSP showing and detailing, this is how I've set up this offering so that it can be sold to the government and they can see what this offering looks like. There's a FedRAMP marketplace you can go to, see a lot of software and hardware and things like that.
Okay.
While they accomplish some similar goals, they are still going to be separate, I think, going forward on their intent as far as the federal marketplace.
So some of these companies that we're talking about that do kind of that compliance as a service, say like Ariento, are they going to submit that paperwork for the client?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. So for CMMC, when you get into the weeds if you think about SOC 2, which maybe more people are familiar with, SOC 2 requires the CPA firm to do the attestation to say, give you their stamp, certificate. Hey, you guys are SOC 2 compliant, type 1 or type 2, depending on what that is. CMMC is using an attestation. They don't use a CPA. It's a newly created program called C3PAO. Like Star Wars, right? There's only less than 100 last I saw in the US that are accredited C3PAOs that can go to your organization and say, yes, you are CMMC 2.0 compliant or level 2. That means that from an Ariento perspective, they can do one or the other. I can help you get compliant and build it all for you, but then they stop when it comes to the accreditation. That has to be a third party that comes in to check their work, right? Or you could have Ariento be the C3PAO because they are one, and they can actually do that attestation, give you the CMMC accreditation. But you could use another vendor within our portfolio to do that gap assessment, gap analysis, and get you ready. It really depends on where you're at in that journey. How far are you? How close do you think you are to actual accreditation? And then we can help make those determinations of, who are their best fits that could help, finish out and then get that CMMC level 2 or 2.0 certification.
Yeah, good stuff. I appreciate that, man. So the third topic I wanted to cover in the time that we've got left, we've got about 8 minutes to talk about this. And then guys, we're going to leave about 15 minutes here at the end. If anybody's got, questions, you can pop them in to the chat. Nathan's back there monitoring our chat. So we are live. This isn't recorded. But nevertheless, I wanted to speak a little bit about, cyber insurance in general, but one of the big things I think people are overlooking is D&O, this directors and officers insurance. We've seen, headlines where guys like Home Depot, I think it was just last year that they had to, what was it, 180 million they had to pay, and their insurance only covered like 130, so they had to, pay 50 million out of pocket. Yeah, that's huge. So number one, I think we see a lot of clients that are not protected enough, but then things like D&O, because a lot of clients think that, directors and officers just takes care of if I'm in business with a partner and my partner goes rogue or something like that, and it protects their interest. But, we're finding out that D&O actually protects you in the cyber risk area as well, so that, you're not getting the government coming and taking your house, taking your kid's college fund and all that fun stuff. So speak to a little bit about what you've seen around cyber insurance and the growing need for it these days.
Yeah, well, addressing it first, I'd say a lot of people are coming to us from a cybersecurity insurance perspective of, hey, here's my checklist that my insurance provider provided me, tells me I have to do all this stuff. Help me get compliant there. Help me just check the boxes, right? And oftentimes I stop back and say, okay, we can certainly help you there. We can check these boxes. We can bring in, email security, multi-factor authentication. We can help you check these boxes. What you need to do though is write a policy and put policy in place, because if something does happen, the cyber insurance providers are going to come to you and say, did you do this? Yes, here's our checkbox. Where in the policy does it say that you guys do this? And do you have examples and is it implemented, right? They're going to look at people, process, and technology before they're going to pay out on a claim. Because oftentimes, you said you have MFA on the checklist. You have Duo licenses. Look, no one uses Duo in your organization. We're not going to pay out that thing. So that's certainly where I'd always start with cyber insurance, is make sure you have the process in place. When it comes to D&O, CISOs especially have kind of a thankless job, right? The chief information security officers working nights, weekends, bad stuff goes, or things go bump in the night, right? They're on call trying to manage triage, doing incident response, or initiating those plans. The thing that they don't need, right, is when things do go bad, is they get personally attacked, right? The company can go after them for negligence or otherwise, of like, hey, you should have known this, you should have done something. In cases, I'm sure that's accurate, right? Hey, maybe they had the wrong people in the wrong positions, but that D&O insurance, what that does is it makes it so that company can't go after me personally and take my house or my personal assets due to what they deem it as negligence in my position in that role. So it's certainly relevant today. Obviously, you doesn't take very many Google headlines to find out CISOs that have been charged or at least prosecuted to some degree, whether that's the government or even civil court by the companies that they supported.
And are you seeing insurance companies getting wise about some of the requirements around cybersecurity? In other words, check this box and I can lower your bill or your premium by X amount of dollars. Are you seeing that happen?
Yeah, we're seeing two things happening right now in cyber insurance. One is it's a risk conversation, right? You guys are you're deemed high risk. If you lower your risk to bring on, obviously we're going to get a better premium. That's pretty much insurance in general. That's news to nobody. We can help there. Hey, these are some of the things you can shore up and get better coverage for, better insurance premiums. What we're also seeing though is insurance companies saying, hey, what we asked for last year is no longer sufficient. Now you got to do X, Y, Z, not just the rest of everything. And also we want proof that it's implemented. We want some letter of attestation or something that says these controls are actually in. So we are seeing cyber insurance because there's so much going on. I mean, breaches every day, that cyber insurance is getting more stringent on what they're going to pay out and the clients are going to take on. So if it shouldn't be just a check the box initiative. We should actually be looking at our posture and making those changes. So if there is an issue or when there does happen to be an issue, you're going to get that payout because you did the right things.
So considering the fact that cyber is kind of like AI in the sense that it moves fast, right? There's so many changes. Should that policy, you think, be reviewed once a year or more often?
It's going to depend on the vertical. At least once a year, though. The security policies overall should be reviewed yearly, at least. As far as, is our incident response plan, is that still valid? Is that still the process we're going to take? What in our systems have changed since we wrote this policy? Policy probably is going to be updated throughout the year, so it makes sense that at the beginning of the fiscal or the end of the fiscal to take a look and say, maybe what have we added to the policy that we're not considering anymore? What have we added from our technology? What people have changed that we were going to go to this person for the response plan. They're no longer here, so now we need to update that. All those things need to be taken into consideration, the people, process, and technology yearly on the posture.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Do you see overall, when it comes to DR and that incident response, do you think that it depends on the industry you're in, that DR policy or that DR plan has to be tested annually, semi-annually, or whatever? Or do you think that, most, industries can just follow a yearly DR test and be okay?
Yeah, I would say very rarely do I talk to clients that actually have tested their DR strategy or their DR plan, right? We've got immutable backups. Oh, when's the last time you actually tested that backup? Or we've got, we've got warm sites that can do the failover. When's the last time you actually tested that failover? It's rough. You don't want to, right? It's because you don't want to know maybe what's hiding under the bed or what's in the closet when you do those things, because it's just going to create more work potentially. But having that peace of mind of knowing if you need to fail over or you need to do a backup or you need to recover somehow, it's going to work because you've tested it. So a lot of those should be done yearly. Again, the amount of people that I see that are actually testing it is very, very low. So that's always an area that we want to say, if you've got something in place, let us help you test it and see the deficiencies and make sure, you're meeting those RTOs or those RPOs that you've defined, like we talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, we're at the 30-minute mark here, but we've got, 700 plus vendors in our portfolio these days. There's so many good vendors out there that can help you if you're struggling in this area, whether it's compliance or, pen testing, just the, normal pen testing and doing some tabletop exercises, things like that you can do to make sure, that you're staying safe, staying up to, abreast of all the, attacks that are out there. I think there's so much that can be done that clients just aren't doing. Some of it may be laziness. Other times it's just cost savings, right? They just don't want to spend the money, until they get hit.
Yeah. Well, and this year, I mean, it's been a consolidation is the name of the game, right? There's kind of a misconception in the sense that, like, if I do this, it's going to cost me a lot of money. I'm going to have to add a lot to the budget. Certainly that might be the case in some ways. In others, hey, you might be overpaying for certain software that's doing dual things that maybe you've got some overlap, and we can consolidate that. Yep. Maybe find some cost savings there. And then add those protections that you need and keep you, within the budget. So we do that all day, and happy to have that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Trevor, I appreciate it, man. I'm going to turn it over, and Nathan, I don't know if we've got any questions that have popped in, but if there are any questions, guys, go ahead and ask a question. We're live. We'll be here for next couple of minutes answering any questions that you might have. But I would say if you're struggling in this area, reach out to us here at VocalPoint. I mean, we can help you, or find a technology advisor. We always say don't go straight to the vendors, because the vendors are just going to tell you whatever you want to hear just so they can retire their quota. Deal with an independent technology advisor. It doesn't cost you any more to do that, and you're going to get independent, straightforward advice without any fluff.
I think that's true across technology, right? Of using an advisor to tell you, best options for you. Because I think it can get very prescriptive, specifically in cybersecurity. There can be a lot of nuance. There's a lot of vendors in the space, right? I attended RSA this year in San Francisco, and just over 700 vendors at attendance, with booths and things like that. Just how can you keep up with that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Clients or customers need to use an advisor to navigate the space. Otherwise, they could end up overspending on things that, hey, there's other tools, or there's other things that you could have addressed that risk area at a cheaper cost, or a more tailored to that business or that vertical. And we do that all day. Hey, clients come to us, hey, I bought this software. It's not doing what I wanted it to do. Now what do we do? How do we pivot?
Yep.
And we have that conversation all the time of, oh, did you know that there's other things out there than this Gartner Magic Quadrant leader? And like, oh, I didn't know we could get that through something else, right? So
yeah, that's what we typically see, right? The CIO that gives a directive that, the IT director goes and pulls, the top 5 in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and then has to figure it all out, weed through stacks of proposals, and, or you do the RFP route, which is literally just a race to the bottom to see who can come in the cheapest with the smallest amount of product at the cheapest price, so that they can add on some stuff in the background, after they get their foot in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, from an advisor perspective, that's where I like what we do, is we focus on that business outcome. What's your actual business outcome you're trying to get?
Yep.
Because we don't have the proverbial truck that's got our offerings on it. The offerings are essentially endless, right? It's about the market, what's in the marketplace that we can pull from. But what's the outcome you're trying to get to, and how do we get that in a way that's going to be within budget and not overspend, but also taking into consideration the risks that business is facing and addressing it accurately.
Yeah. And by the way, guys, for anybody joining today, we're going to be sending out our, best practices playbook around cybersecurity. So you'll get that. We'll send out anybody that signed up, to be a part of this webinar today. We'll also get the link to the recording. So this is all fully recorded. We'll get you out the link to it so you can pop into it. But yeah, for the most part, I think we've covered everything that we need to cover. Trevor, I don't see any questions, so I'll give it one more second here. Nathan's saying nothing in the questions right now. So if nobody's got any questions, we'll wrap it up from here. But glad that you guys could jump on. We're going to try to keep doing these every now and then and pick some hot topics. We've got a lot going on right now around AI. Probably 70 or 80% of our opportunities that we're working on right now are around AI or some sort of automation. I hate to call it AI because a lot of times it's just, RPA or machine learning that we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, hot topic. Everybody wants to automate, do more with less, right? So we'll probably cover that in a future topic here. But anyway, Trevor, thank you. I appreciate it. Nate, thanks for jumping into the comments here. And, reach out to us at VocalPointConsulting.com if you guys have any questions. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor. Bye. Okay, so